The onslaught of new electric cars for Mercedes-Benz continues in 2023, and this is the latest model to arrive in Australia. This is the EQE, a fully electric E-Class effectively. Now, we all know how important the E-Class is in terms of the history and heritage of Mercedes-Benz globally. So when you look at it from that point of view, this EQE actually becomes a very important car for the brand. They are transforming into an electric vehicle manufacturer mostly. They're putting petrol and diesel engines behind in a lot of places, and they're switching to electric power. But does it work and does it make sense? Well, I've got the EQE 350 behind me here. I'm also going to be driving the entry-level EQE 300 rear-wheel drive, and I'm going to run you through what you need to know about this car in the video today. We're going to go for a drive, we're going to run through the interior, see how much energy this uses, and see how much it costs, and what the options are costing like as well, because this might be an expensive car, or it also might be good value for money. Let's have a closer look. The new Mercedes-Benz EQE electric sedan range starts from $134,900 before on-road costs, and that's for the entry-level rear-wheel drive EQE 300. Going up to the more powerful all-wheel drive EQE 350 4MATIC adds 20 grand to that asking price for a total of $154,900. Once again, that's before on-road costs. The main difference between these two is the powertrain. It goes from 180 kilowatts and 550 newton meters up to 215 kilowatts and 765 newton meters with twin electric motors. There is an EQE 53 AMG as well, which adds a host of upgrades to the vehicle, along with outputs of 460 kilowatts and 950 newton meters. However, that is more expensive again at $214,900 plus on roads. And while that AMG model can run from 0 to 100 in a startling 3.5 seconds, this 350 is no slouch itself. It does it in 6.3 seconds. The 300 is the slowest of the bunch, but it's far from embarrassing itself at 7.3 seconds in 0 to 100 times. As you would expect, levels of specification are high across the board in this EQE range. The only element aside from powertrain that separates the 300 from the 350 externally is a larger lip spoiler on the boot. There's an AMG line interior and exterior package as standard in Australia, along with 20-inch AMG alloy wheels, digital LED headlights with adaptive high beam, a 12.8-inch infotainment display, 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster, heads-up display, panoramic sunroof, and a Burmester branded sound system. There is a lot more detail here as well. Head over to Drive.com.au to read the full review for all of those details. So this Mercedes EQE is pretty much an electric E-Class, but it's important to note here that this car actually uses Mercedes' new electric-only platform, and that makes it different to the relationship between, say, a GLC and an EQC, where they've used a internal combustion platform and put an electric powertrain into it. This is ground-up electric. Now, important thing to note here, this is approximately the same size as a Mercedes E-Class. It's about 50 mils shy of being 5 meters long. So yes, it's a big car. Looks can be deceiving, however, because of the dimensions and the shape of this car overall. It's on a much longer wheelbase, over 180 millimeters longer, in fact, and it's designed mostly with aerodynamics in shape. This is Mercedes' second most aerodynamic model, and they say it's one of the slipperiest cars on the road at the moment. It's got a drag coefficient of about 0.22. There's a lot of things going on there. Some people tell me, smarter people than I am by the way, say that a teardrop is approximately the most aerodynamic shape that you can get, and you can kind of see what they're going for here. There's a big swooping roof here. There's not a lot of sharp angles going on, and it's really trying to cut through the air. The wheels are an important part of that, but also these door handles, the old flush style door handles, but they do also pop out just like that. You can give the handle a little bit of a swipe and out they go. Interesting, they also have a very mechanical feel to them, an old school Mercedes feel, you would say. This is an electric latch effectively, but it feels very solid and sturdy. Now, I'll put that away once again. Now, if you're finding this video useful, let us know. Give us a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Let us know what you think of this EQE. And if you have any questions, I'll do my best to get back to you. Another thing, which is kind of cool actually, I'll just unlock it to show you. You want to fill up the windscreen wiper on this bad boy. it's on here. This isn't, I thought that might be actually as a battery charger, but it's not. That is where you fill up your windscreen washer fluid, because the bonnet here, you might be able to open it if you're a mechanic, but as an owner, you'll probably never have to. So for topping up your windscreen washer fluid on a long run, that's where you do it. This is the interior of the Mercedes EQE 350, and for the record, it's the same as the 300. The big difference there obviously is in the powertrain, but this is a very nice interior, which kind of needs to be, I think, for the asking price. This one in particular, it's extremely white. We've got white materials everywhere here, and I probably wouldn't recommend this for anyone who wanted to actually use the car on a day-to-day basis. I reckon this would just get way too dirty way quickly, and if you've got kids, well, I'd keep them at about a 5k radius away from this thing to try and keep it clean. But you can obviously get different colored interiors for this car, but the materials in particular are really high quality, not just the seats, but everywhere. We've got this big wooden-like material here across the front, a big 12.8-inch infotainment display. That is big and flat and quite an upright dashboard, because in other models, EQE, in the 53, you can get that optional hyperscreen setup, which is extremely expensive and also extremely large, but you don't get that here. Do you need it? Probably not, because this is a great infotainment display. It's got the MBUX setup here. It's a good infotainment system. It's crispy. You've got great cameras, a lot of detail there, and it boots up and loads really quickly, so there's no issues there. You've got some nice materials up here on top, some nice color variations and stitchings. You'll see this rose gold coloring going on here around the air vents, and that's a thing that is common to a few EQE models. It's not just a color that's picked randomly. That actually represents the colors of the windings in the electric motors, which is a cool little detail for this car. Don't forget, this car is based on Mercedes' new electric-only platform, so we don't have things like transmission tunnels getting in the way, which is really nice. As you can see down here, there's a massive storage area. You've got a couple of USB-C power outlets there, but that's really handy. You've also got this space in here, another big storage area. I've got my phone in there on the wireless charging pad at the moment. You've got a couple of cup holders as well, which is cool, and I noticed you can pull this lever and actually pop those out. If you don't need cup holders for some reason, you can just make that a big storage space, which is cool. Center console is pretty big. That opens from the button in the middle there. A button at the back would maybe be handy. I've seen that in other cars, so people at the back can get into that. Small detail perhaps, but storage is pretty good here. We've got a lot of power outlets. There are 2 more USB-C power outlets in this center thing here, by the way. I'll just close that again there. It does keep this car looking nice and clean and organized while you're driving around. These seats, very nice, very quality. They are adjusted by these buttons on the doors here. You've got memory and you've got heating in here. No ventilation as standard, but they're very comfortable and they feel quality as well. And it makes an interior that overall I think fits the bill for this vehicle. It's classic Mercedes in a lot of ways, but it also feels very modern, and there's a nice attention to detail going on, which I really appreciate. But let's have a look in that second row. All right, in this second row of the EQE, you start to see where the benefits of that longer wheelbase come in. This vehicle is approximately the same size overall in terms of length to an E-Class, a traditional big Mercedes sedan, but the wheelbase is about 180 mils longer, which is a fair bit. And you're never going to accuse the E-Class of being tight and cramped in the second row, but there is a lot of space going on in the second row of this EQE. That is my driving position up front there. I've been accused of sitting quite close to the steering wheel at times before. It's probably true, but as you can see, I've got buckets of legroom here. I could move back quite a way in that driver's seat, and there's still a lot of space going on. There's plenty of headroom as well. Slightly tight on the side there, but where you sit, generally speaking, it's fine. And you do have a nice sunroof there, which helps lighten things up a little bit. It's always a nice detail. And in terms of seat comfort, this is pretty good. It's a nice seat that sits back quite a fair way. You've got a fair bit of rake also. Visibility is good. The seats themselves are quite comfortable. You sit down fairly low here, and the seats have a nice amount of rake, a little bit of a buckety action there, so there's no issues there. You've got air vents here. There are no vent controls like you do get in higher spec versions of this EQE, but pop this bad boy down and you do have a couple of USB-C power outlets there. The materials continue on as well. I've got to say, this white interior of this car is giving me cold sweats. I've already brought in a fair bit of stuff onto this foot mat here. it's going to have a fairly hard life, this thing. But if you did choose a different color, that wouldn't be as much of an issue. But you've got the nice materials on the doors here. It's a really nice combination of things. It feels quality, which is great, but I think that space and comfort is the best thing about being in the back of this car. We've got ISOFIX points and top tether points on the outboard seat in the back here, so you can fit baby seats, no worries. There's plenty of room even for a forward-facing seat as well. But if you wanted to fit 3 across the back here, it is maybe a little bit tight. I'll just jump in the middle here. It is a slightly more of a dicky seat in the middle. You do sit up a little bit higher and it's a bit tighter, so you're probably better off with 2 adults in the back here, and then you're perfectly comfortable. That also allows you to pop down this armrest and pop that out. Where are the cup holders, I hear you ask? I thought that as well. I thought, why is all this here just for that little thing there? Maybe you can stick your phone in there or something, I'm not sure. But open that once and then give it another little push. Boom, there you go. A couple of cup holders there, which is helpful on those long runs. From the outside, the boot of the EQE doesn't look very large. However, once you do open it, you'll find 430 litres of space on offer. That's not too bad. It's smaller than a regular E-Class for reference, but it's bigger than an E-Class hybrid. Currently behind the wheel of an EQE 350. This is effectively mid-spec in the range. There's a 300 rear-wheel drive below this one, and there's also the EQE 53 AMG, and that's quite a significant jump upwards. But Mercedes expects this will probably be the volume pick of the range, and I tend to agree with them as well. You've got 2 electric motors here, so you've got all-wheel drive, and you've got a bit more power and torque. There's a bit over 200 kilowatts available here. Now, I wouldn't say that the 300 is a slouch by any means, and it doesn't feel temperamental being only rear-wheel drive, but this does feel a little bit more assured, I suppose, and that extra bit of grunt is nice, especially when you're getting into that sort of price bracket of what we're dealing with here, around $150,000. One big appeal with this car though, it's the same with a lot of electric cars, but I think it's particularly apparent here, is the amount of refinement and just the absolute lack of noise going on in this cabin. You could probably hear the raindrops on the windscreen. If it wasn't for that, if it wasn't raining, drop a pin and you could probably hear that as well. It's extremely quiet. There's not much noise coming through the suspension or anything like that. There's a slight whir from those electric motors in this car, but otherwise it's very, very quiet. The ride quality of this car is also very good. It needs to be, I think. This isn't a performance car. This isn't a vehicle that's going to be getting hurled through corners or anything like that. And in keeping with that whole quietness and sereneness, this does have a good ride quality. It's a heavy vehicle, all electric vehicles are, so you do need to sort of pay attention to that, and you do feel that weight come into play at times in some bumps, but this vehicle does a very good job of keeping things nicely absorbed all of the time. It steers nicely, it's easy to get around in, you literally just hit that drive button and set off. And we've got a 0 to 100 acceleration time of a little bit over 6 seconds here, so it's actually a fairly quick car, and being all-wheel drive, there's no issues with putting that power down, even on a dreary day like today. Now, I did say this isn't a sports car, but let's talk about handling prowess of this EQE. It's quite good, actually. It's definitely not a nimble vehicle. It is quite heavy. It's also surprisingly long. It might not look that long in person, but this is a large vehicle. And when you do start driving through some corners, this thing does feel nicely balanced overall. You're not going to be able to get in touch with something like an i30N or a Civic Type R, but as you go through some corners like these ones, it feels really grippy, it feels confident, and I think for the person who's going to be buying this car, they're not going to be out crushing those hilly climbs on weekends. It's got plenty enough handling scope for everyday usage. You might come into a corner a little bit hot and you've got to turn in. This will feel confident and grippy most of the time. So in terms of energy consumption in this EQE 350 and the 300 for that matter, keep in mind I have been jumping between different cars over the last couple of days and spending short stints in various conditions. So I've got a bit of an indicator, I suppose, but not the full picture in terms of consumption. That will come after we get to spend a week with each car, I think. That'll happen in the future. But as a bit of a guide here, I'm currently looking at 23.3 kilowatt hours per 100 Ks, and that comes from twisty roads, I suppose, a bit of acceleration and that sort of thing. So not the most efficient driving. When we were cruising along the highway doing 80 or 90 k's an hour, we were seeing figures more like 17, 18 or 19 kilowatt hours per 100. So that is a better figure. It's pretty good. It's helped by the impressive drag coefficient of this car. This is one of the slipperier vehicles on the road getting around at the moment, but it's also not as good as some of the other mainstream EVs we're seeing come onto the market at the moment. In terms of driving range, the Mercedes-Benz EQE can run from as much as 508 kilometers. This is for the 300 spec, according to WLTP testing. The twin-motor EQE 350 can do 462 kilometers, while the high-performance AMG 53 has a range of 435 kilometers. All these numbers are according to the WLTP cycle and are claimed by Mercedes-Benz. Now, if you want more power and torque than this EQE 350, there is an AMG model, the 53 AMG, and we've got a review of that car on Drive.com.au at the moment. But I reckon for most tastes and for most needs, this 350 is the sweet spot in the range and what people should be looking for overall mostly. And it delivers on a lot of important elements, which I think are crucially important for a big luxury Mercedes sedan. It rides quietly, it rides comfortably, it's got a lot of tech, and that interior is pretty special. I like the amount of space in the second row. The boot's not too bad either. And in terms of looks, I reckon it's a pretty good looking car. Makes me think that maybe Mercedes is getting better and better at producing these electric cars, especially when they're getting their own battery technology in there on their own electric car platform as well. Now, this car, it is impressive, but it is coming up against a lot of new electric vehicles priced at a similar point to this vehicle. So you're going to be seeing a few comparisons of this coming up against some of its main competitors very soon on Drive.com.au. Now, thanks for watching this review. Let us know in the comments below if you've got any questions about this car, and of course, head over to Drive.com.au for the full review.